Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of I Never Knew But My Dog Did podcast. I am Maureen Scanlon, or otherwise known as Life Coach Maureen. Most of you know me. I am a master life coach, an award-winning author, and your podcast host for today, growing a community of showing us here in this human experience we can overcome anything. And I never disappoint. I'm going to pat myself on the back here because those who come into my existence are meant to be here. And when I saw our next guests, I melted because the power of the resilient spirit just shines through with the both of them. So not only do we have one, but we have two today. So today we are talking to Annette Hutcheson and her husband, Matthew, and she is the wife of 32 years and a mother of 4. In 2012, her life was torn apart when Matthew was arrested by the FBI at gunpoint. He was later convicted and sentenced to 17 years in federal prison. During the ensuing years, she raised 4 children by herself. Yay, single moms. Just saying, we are resilient. She lost her home, her friends, and her business, everything, including her husband. She went back to college, obtained a formal legal education, and through the court system, got her husband out of prison 7 years early. Matthew spent 3 of those 10 years in solitary confinement or its equivalent. Yet they kept their family together, their love alive, and their heads on straight. They defeated their defeat and caused failure to fail. They now share with others how they did it. Welcome, my beautiful friends.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're happy to be here.
I cannot wait to hear both of your story and then the combination of togetherness of how we overcame. I usually start the podcast off saying, what was your knee moment, which is the moment where you drop to your knees and you're like, oh my God, what am I going to do? But it's a new year, new us. And I thought something sort of an epiphany hit me. And I thought of Michelangelo's statue, The Thinker. And so more so not just being on our knees and being like, oh gosh, the world is ending and this is terrible. I thought about how we go deeper into thinking about what is going on in my life. Where do I belong? What am I supposed to be doing here? And when these tough moments come, we're really in that deep place of thinking. So I am going to start off with let's start off with you, Matthew, because I'm going to focus a lot on your wife, which, that's just a woman thing. We're going to connect. But we do want to hear, let's start off with your story and how everything transpired to end up to the point where you ended up in prison.
Sure. Well, I was an advisor to elected officials in Washington, D.C. I was also in the financial industry. I am an expert in managerial finance and financial law, and went to school to become an actuary and followed that path. And that course took me to Washington, D.C., where I was an advisor to these elected officials, all 3 branches of government. I'm a Supreme Court amicus. I've advised both houses of Congress. I've testified before Congress 6 times. I've advised the White House, 2 White Houses. And during that course, some of those elected officials asked me to engage in certain transactions that would help stimulate the economy, create jobs around the 2008, 2009 period. And I did. And a component of that interfered with some other political ambitions of one of the elected officials. And things spiraled downward and it became political. I don't think they ever thought that I would fight back as hard as I did. I think they wanted me just to kind of yield and withdraw from the scenario. But Annette and I got our family together. We've been given a couple years heads up notice by insiders in Washington, D.C. that this was coming. And so it wasn't something that just happened. We knew that there were people who wanted to see me removed from influence and silence me in Washington, D.C. And that wasn't a bad thing per se. It was just that I was so entrenched and so inside the circle, inside the beltway, and had so much influence in that realm that there were some people who just wanted me out, which Annette didn't mind one bit. She didn't like me being there, and it was a strain on the family. I was gone a lot. So anyway, we gathered the family together and told our kids and her parents, my parents, and others, hey, this is what's happening, and this is what could happen, and this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to not blackmail, but there was an element of extortion and bullying, and I don't know what else you would call it, but it was a political brutality brought to bear on my family and me.
But we never thought that you'd end up in prison.
Yeah.
That we didn't think that would ever happen.
Yeah. So anyway, one thing led to another, and eventually when the powers that be realized that I was not going to capitulate or yield, that's when they tore our door off its hinges and came into our house with guns. And they took me away and convicted. We went to trial. I lost at trial, as everybody does. I'm not, whether you're innocent or not is not even a question. If you get to the point where you're in front of a jury and the jury realizes you've been indicted by a grand jury before them, it's the art and the techniques used during trial to frame a defendant a particular way is just over. They just cannot overcome it. And so I was convicted, I was taken away, sent to prison. And at that point in time, Annette was all of a sudden alone. Her fall to her knees moment happened when our son came to her the Sunday after I was taken away and said, "Who's going to iron my shirt for church?" And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's...
Yeah. So the Sunday after Matt was taken to prison, he always makes sure the kids' clothes were ironed for church on Sunday. I hate ironing and he doesn't mind it, so he did that for me. So he always made sure that was done. And he was 9 years old, came upstairs and said, "Mom, who's going to iron my shirt?" And I just hugged him, sent him back downstairs, and went in my room and cried.
Oh God, I could only imagine. I mean, the feeling of helplessness and hopelessness.
Oh yeah.
I mean, and the first thing that kind of came to my mind, and I think I'm not a fan of politics. I'm not a fan of I'm going to say court system, because I don't feel we have a justice system, with all due respect. And I know you're in the legal system now.
No, it's true.
It does seem you can, unfortunately, seems your ability to buy your way in or out, I think, has overcome the truth of justice. But what the first thing that came to my mind, Matthew, was I feel like you were a scapegoat. Like, you were asked to do this thing. It's kind of like when you're in the corporate world and your bosses tell you to do this thing, you're following instructions because obviously you want to keep your career and your job and you want to excel. And then when it all comes down, boom, they go right to, the worker bees. Do you feel like you were a scapegoat? And did those higher up that asked you to do these things, did they suffer any consequences?
Go ahead, Annette.
No, go ahead. It's your part.
I've never felt like a victim, because that's just not how I think. The 5 members of Congress, they gave me their word. They're going to stand by me all the way. And they said, we need you to do this economic model using this particular law, which is a valid law. It's still a law today. It's been a law since 1994. The thing they didn't like was that I built in a healthcare component to the job manufacturing endeavor. And that conflicted with another healthcare thing that was happening in Washington, D.C. at the time. So had I eliminated the healthcare thing, the whole thing would have gone away. But the problem is that I couldn't because I had contracts. And so it was either be engaged in civil litigation for the rest of my life, or just stare this thing down. And Annette and I, I think they thought that Annette didn't know what was going on. I think they thought that my mother didn't know, or that my Annette's siblings didn't know, or my children didn't know. They knew. We kept those who were in our circle apprised of what was happening. So when it ultimately did happen, nobody was surprised. But those 5 congressmen who are no longer in office, they've all retired. They did not come to my defense. They were just silent. They didn't say yay. They didn't say nay. They just literally they disappeared from the scene, and that was disappointing. One of them had passed away. The primary legislator had passed away in late 2009, and so he was kind of the spearhead. And had he not passed away, I truly believe things probably would have been different. But do I feel like a scapegoat? In the sense that I was railroaded, or I was attacked for political reasons, and then the political people who asked me to do it, they ran and hid and didn't support me. If that's being a scapegoat, yeah, I guess. They kept their mouth shut. If they would have spoken up and provided the background and the context, the jury would have said, oh, okay, we understand what's going on here. This is honorable what you're doing. This is good. This is investment. This is economic development. But instead, they were silent, and all the people that I needed to come to my defense were so frightened and taken off guard, thinking, how could you have done something wrong? Because all they're going off of is what the government told them or what the newspapers said. And it just stuns everybody. An indictment is the bullet. If you're indicted, it's over at the indictment. You can't overcome it. And the government has spent decades and hundreds of millions of dollars on neuro-linguistic programming and other word use to anchor in the minds of people, and it does not move. It's there. So they use their techniques to create a firm conviction at the time of the indictment. And I should say, however, I do honor the good men and women of law enforcement and the judicial system and the U.S. Attorney's Office. There are many, many, many good people who are doing good things for society, and I'm thankful for them, and I applaud their efforts, and I support them. I'm not one of those people who says, get rid of the prisons. I would like to see improvements to how we handle things like this in society, but I also understand that the prison system is there to protect the public, and we have to protect the public. We have to protect the interests of the innocent. So it's an interesting dynamic. But do I feel? Am I a scapegoat? Yes, in the traditional sense. Am I a victim? No. Nobody has victimized me. No human being gets to dictate to me the terms of my response. Or the terms of how I handle these things. And Annette and I approached it through that ethos, through that lens, through that way of looking at things. We just refuse to be defeated. Or if the public wants to see us as defeated, we defeated that defeat.
I love that so much. And I want to hear how you made it through this, Annette, and what was the official charge, the indictment that they were charging you with?
Wire fraud.
Wow.
Wire fraud is the catch-all criminal statute that literally, I mean, they could just go to a phone book call somebody, start digging into that person's life, and they've probably committed wire fraud unknowingly. It's such a broad, and any transaction that's done over the internet or by phone with somebody else could be construed as fraudulent if framed and argued that way. You could be convicted of defrauding your mother when you asked her for some Christmas money or for some birthday money.
Sure.
And a good prosecutor could get a conviction on almost anybody for any reason. So it's wire fraud. That's kind of the catch-all statute.
As a fan of true crime, I've seen people do less time for murder than what you were given. So we can see the undertones of definitely the politics were involved. So here you are, Annette, like not knowing what's going to happen and how to even fight this. Or I love the honesty, though, that you were so transparent about here's what's going on. And I think what they like to do is keep everybody in this shadow of darkness so you don't know how to fight them. And I'm so proud of both of you for saying, heck no, we know what's going on and we are going to expose this. And also it's definitely a testimony to your strength of saying we're not backing down no matter who you are, congressman or anybody else. We know what the truth is and we're not backing down. So Annette, you're in this moment where, oh my gosh, I don't know what is going to happen. And when you say we were not victims, we decided, and everybody knows on this podcast and in my coaching and everything that I do, deciding to think differently, deciding to make decisions is where the change, I think, between victimhood and triumph come in. What do you think? What's the moment or the mindset that says, here's the line in the sand between letting something overcome us or overcoming something?
So for me, there was a lot of years where I mourned our past. I mourned our future. I mourned what I thought our life was going to be. And I spent a lot of time in that space when I was driving alone, when I was in bed at night alone. I would mourn what I thought what I thought our life was going to be, what I thought we were going to have, the forever home we thought that we had, that our grandkids were going to come play at, that we were going to have parties and birthday parties and family gatherings. And we always had the party house. We were party throwers, And so I mourned all of that because it literally was swept away overnight. And I'm not going to lie, I spent a lot of time in that space looking back. And I was at church one Sunday, and it was in 2018. So this is 6 years that I've been spending looking back. And they were talking about the story of Lot and his wife leaving Sodom and Gomorrah. And there's one verse where it says, and she looked back and she turned into a pillar of salt. And that hit me hard, right in the heart. And I knew right then, sorry, I didn't think I was going to cry on this. I'm a crier.
It's okay. We love crying. We love emotion. We love releasing. This is great. No, you're feeling it all over again. And it's so authentic and real.
So at that point, I knew that I had to quit looking back. I couldn't see a future. When I looked in the future, it was just black. I couldn't see what was going to happen. And at that point, I knew that I needed to start envisioning a future and stop mourning the past. And it literally happened that fast. And so from then on, when I was driving alone, when I was alone at night, when I was talking to our kids, we talked about what the future was going to look like. We were gonna have a home again for the grandkids. We didn't have grandkids yet, but we knew we would at some point, and Dad was going to be home and everything was going to be okay. And we were going to have fun, and there was going to be Christmas, and there was going to be Saturday morning pancakes and chickens to gather eggs and horses to ride. And these are all of the things that we had lost. But after that moment, I knew that we could get that back. And I knew it was going to be a while, and I knew it was going to be hard, but I knew that we could do it.
Wow. Wow. If you see me look down, I'm writing things because I'll revisit them because I don't have great memory. Envision a future and stop mourning the past. I mean, I think that's the title of your episode anyway, but wow, what it did was it just suddenly you're like, okay, this moves me forward to taking action. So I'm no longer stuck in this place of helplessness. And it's
Exactly.
that's what we do as humans is the anxiety and depression we feel is we're so stuck on I have this unknown in front of me and all I can see is what's going on right now and what has happened, and that prevents the action that we take to move forward. And
Yeah.
so you decided not only to take your life in your own hands but also to take the sort of the justice system into your own hands and the fight legally for your husband, which I love so, so much. So, how did that come to mind where you said, this is a good action that I can take?
So from the moment that Matt went in, so we were forced to use a public defender for Matt's trial, and that's a whole nother story in itself. But we had to use a public defender, and so public defenders, once the appeal is over, then you're done. You have no more legal help. So Matt and I together, the first few years he would write a legal brief or something over the prison email system, which is a terrible system. Like they have the tiniest little 1980s computer things. And I would figure out how to format it. I would find cases. He'd say, we need to find a case that has this and this and this. And so I would search the internet for cases, and we would do things that way. And I would make copies, format it all, make copies, and go mail it into the court. And the courts don't like getting things mailed, but if you're not an attorney, then you can't digitally upload things to the court. So everything had to be mailed. It was a tedious process. I would format it. I'd mail it USPS back to Matt. It would take about 2 weeks usually for him to get it. He'd go through it, make changes. He'd tell me on line 25, make this change, on line 130, make this change, so it was very slow and tedious. And then the judge would just deny it.
Oh.
And that happened over and over and over and over and over again and over and over. And so finally, after my, what did you call it? Come to your knees moment.
Yes.
I love
Yes.
that.
Your knee moment.
Yes. I decided, okay, there's something I don't know about the legal system. There's something going on. So I decided I was going to go back to school, and we lived in a small mountain town in the middle of Idaho and 2 hours from any civilization. So I knew I couldn't do it in person. So I searched the internet for online schools that didn't require a math class because I did not want to have to take math.
No math. I love that.
So I found one, and for 2 years, I'd come home from work and I would do school every day. And I had 2 kids at home still, and they were very supportive and great kids and helpful. And, they were very involved in high school, in sports and in choir and in band and all the activities. And so as a mom, I didn't want to miss any of those things when Matt went in, and I wanted them to feel like everything was as normal as possible. So I went to all of those and I did all of those things. And then I would come home and I'd be up until 2 or 3 in the morning studying and doing homework and then go to work the next day. But I knew that it was going to be worth it for the things that I was learning.
Oh my gosh. I have to interject for a second. Listeners, are you hearing this? Are you in as much awe as I am? When you think you can't do something, I want you to come back to this podcast and I want you to listen to what Annette did. She is a single mom. Her husband is in prison. She has no idea what the outcome is. She's 2 hours away from a school and says, nope, I'm going to go ahead and go back to school. I mean, the amount of resilience and I can't even, like, if we could jar this up and sell this, I mean, your resilience and your ability to just say, I'm doing this. And I know I was a single parent as well, in a different situation through divorce. And you're trying to be mom and dad, and trying to be mom and dad is just in itself hard enough. Going to school is hard enough. And then kids and activities is hard enough. And then trying to work and support the family. My word, to put all of this into this big bundle that is you is just, I can't even explain. And I'm gushing. I'm sorry, but I just thinking of what I had gone through doing just what I had done, minus all of the trauma and the misjustice that was happening in your family. So you ended up getting a degree.
I did. I got a paralegal degree from Colorado Mountain College, and I was gonna continue and get a 4-year law degree. But at that point, I was like, I really felt like I knew what I needed to learn, and I didn't want to go into more student debt,
Yeah.
honestly. I mean, I was 50 years old, and I was like, I don't need $40,000 of student debt.
Right, right. And I love that you took the matters into your hands and said, the amount of patience, I'm the most impatient person, I think, on the planet. And the amount of patience it took to write those, mail those in 2 weeks to get to him, correct it, send it back. Oh man, I have no idea how that patience. And so you think probably because that court system process is so slow, do you think it helped you to really say, I have to do something way more proactive because this isn't going to get us anywhere? Did that really fuel your fire to say, I'm going to figure out how to work the system? And that's kind of what we have to do. I think life is sort of like work the system, figure out what works best, take whatever shortcuts, get whatever knowledge you need. Do you agree with that?
I do. Oh yeah. Um, the judge basically told me quit sending documents in. He said you're done. Nothing can be done. He's in prison. He's spending his 17 years in prison. Just basically quit bugging us.
Wow.
And so I knew that there were other
Venues,
yeah, that's a good word. I knew
vehicles,
Yeah.
pathways, venues.
to get somebody out. Avenues, that's a good one. Avenues, yes. And so, but I didn't know what they were. Matt knew a little more because he kind of had a legal background, and so he knew some of them, but there were new ones popping up all the time. And each of them are very specific to the person's case. So like what worked for me to help Matt get out probably wouldn't work for another person.
Mhm.
And sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. And some things you can get to apply a little piece here and a little piece there, but you really have to know how to find them. And that's what I wanted to do, was know where to look and how to find them and how to apply them. The things that Matt needed to do while he was in and the things that I needed to do while I was out kind of ended up merging together so that it was the perfect storm to get him home.
I
Yep.
love that.
Once Annette finished school, I was the assistant to the warden. So I was the person who cleaned the bathrooms and vacuumed the floors, mopped the floors. And so I interacted with the warden every single day. And he began to come to me saying, hey, I'm following this and something has changed. The way your wife is approaching this stuff has opened up a door for you. And there was a little back and forth, and Annette was denied once again, but she filed an appeal. And the appeal this time was granted. And that started an administrative process within the Bureau of Prisons, which ultimately obtained the endorsement from the court, the endorsement from the Department of Justice, and the endorsement from other places. And Annette basically had narrowed her argument down so precisely. It took a lot of time and a lot of no's, but she didn't give up. She stayed super focused, didn't get discouraged. She says that sometimes she did, but in reality, she was just wanting, she could see it. She could see what was going to happen, and it just wouldn't arrive soon enough. That anticipation was probably what she was really feeling, but she just honed it and sharpened it and sharpened it and sharpened it until her steel cut through the steel door. It became so sharp that her steel cut right through the steel door, and that door fell open, and I walked through.
Oh, I can't imagine the elation that you guys felt when you're like, oh my gosh, we got our appeal. And then the ball just started picking up momentum. How did you support each other throughout this? And like you said, she had her moments. My gosh, if she didn't, I would say she's not human. And so of course she had to have those moments, but how would you lift each other up in those moments where you felt like, I don't know if we can go on, or, how did that work with your marriage, your relationship?
We've always been very in tune with each other. And I'm going to tell a story about when we were first married and didn't have any kids. I worked at a bakery and I had to be there at 2:00 in the morning. This is in 1992 or 3. And I broke down on a bridge on the way to work, and there's no cars around. There's no cell phones back then.
Your car broke down.
Oh, what did I say?
You said you broke down.
My car broke down.
Either one.
just a little clarification.
On a bridge, anyways, on the way to work. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And the bakery was in a little bit of a scary part of town, and I didn't really want to walk there. It was about 4 miles from where I broke down. I didn't want to walk there at 2:00 in the morning. And I was just sitting there going, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And 2 minutes later, I see headlights and they pull it behind me, and Matt gets out of the car. And he's like, I just felt like something was wrong and I was going to come check on you.
Oh, I love it.
So we have that going on with us always. And so
happy because people don't understand how real that is. And it is literally this connection of souls, and twin flame verbiage gets a bad rap, but I really, really believe that. And I'm going to tell you a quick story. I call that the Cheeto moment. So I'm sitting at my desk one day, just, working, and I got this craving for Cheetos. And I was just like, man, I wish we had some Cheetos. Didn't say a word, didn't text, didn't call, didn't anything. And my husband was working outside of the home at the time, going to the office. And that man did not walk in at 5:00 that night with a bag of Cheetos. So it's Cheeto moment.
Yeah.
Like, you don't know how you have this telepathic spiritual connection to your person. And as a relationship expert and dating coach, I got to tell people, if you're wanting to know how to validate the healthiness of your relationship, look for the Cheeto moments. Because I've seen it a million times with my husband and I, and hearing you guys, that is just, so beautiful. So you were so in tune to one another. And so when you were going through this hard time, tell us how you knew how each other was feeling.
I would be, at work doing my thing, and I'd be like, I think I need to send Matt an email. So let me explain the email system in the prisons. So it's an app that I had to get. And on my end, it looks completely different on his end, but I send an email through this app, and in the next 90 minutes, it is filtered to make sure that there's nothing nefarious in the email. And then he gets it in that 90 minutes later, and he opens it. And then when he responds, it goes back to that, and I get it 90 minutes later. So it's 3 hours to get an email back and forth to each other. So I would be at work and I'd be sitting there going, something's going on with Matt. I better email him. So I'd go email him, and at the same time, usually he was emailing me, telling me something that was going on in the prison, and vice versa. If I was having some issue with the kids or with work, or I got a legal notice or something like that, he always knew, and I was getting an email right when I was going to start emailing him about what was going on.
Wow.
Yeah.
That happened all the time.
When and forgive me for
Go ahead.
telling the story, but I ended up at FCI Terminal Island, which is in Los Angeles, California, and it's where Al Capone spent some time. It's a prison that's, if you ever watch a movie produced by Hollywood where they're in prison, that's where they're filming it, there or around there. It's in the shipping lanes down at the port of Los Angeles. So the big tanker ships are coming in and out of it's right in the ocean. I mean, Terminal Island is a man-made island that is jetties out into the ocean. Anyway, when I got off the bus, I was shackled. They unshackled me and they let me into the inner compound. And in the inner compound, there's palm trees and a rose garden. And it was beautiful. It was cement everywhere, but palm trees and a rose garden in the middle. So every day I would pick a rose and I would go back to my cell and I would press it in a dictionary. I'd press the petals in a dictionary. And I ended up with about 14 dictionaries pressing roses at any given time. But I then would write a love letter to Annette and include the petals once they were dry and pressed. I would send those home. And I sent hundreds of letters with pressed rose petals. And we wrote a story about it called Petals from Prison. And it was, Annette lived off of that for years. And likewise, she would send me stories and pictures. And, you know, she let me see the kids. She'd take pictures of the kids and let me watch them grow up and tell me what was going on in their lives. But most of all, to have a wife who says, okay, I'm done. I'm pulling out my sword and I'm coming for you. I'm coming to get you out. That is so heroic and so magnificently bold to have a wife. She could have said, you know what, 17 years is a long time. We had a great run. I love you. I'll always love you. But, you know, life goes on. You're in there. I'm out here. I've got to live my life. I'm sorry. And I don't think society would have faulted her for that.
Right.
I think society would have said, yeah, you know, it's tough, but she's got to do what she's got to do. But instead she said, no, we love each other. We've made these commitments, these covenants to each other. We have our children who need their mom and dad. And I'm pulling out my sword and I'm coming for you.
Yeah.
And believe me, there are a lot of people in the prison system who think Annette Hutcheson is the most heroic human being on earth. And that is not an exaggeration. And of course, I am foremost among them.
And I am certain many listeners after this will be as well. So enough words. It was the princess that rode up on the white horse with rescuing the prince out of the tower is what I'm seeing. So I love that. And, you know, girl power, let's go. That really, because you had also such a deep connection, there was no, from what I feel from you guys, I'm also an intuitive, psychic. So I feel your spirit team, and it really is just, it wasn't even a possibility for her. You know, it was, I'm going to live separate from you, but I'm not separated from you. So we're still connected no matter what. And we're having this experience. Yeah, it's negative, but it's an experience we're supposed to have, and we're still going to have this together, which brings us to, gosh, I could talk to you guys for like 5 hours, which brings us to the good of what has come from this. So you are freed from prison finally, and you're together. And now I see the things that you are doing to pay it forward as a couple to the world, sharing everything. And that's my whole philosophy is whatever experience I have in the depths of my sorrow and mourning, I was getting out of a domestic violence relationship. And I just remember saying to myself, or saying out loud to a friend, if I'm supposed to help one person, I will. And I see that in the two of you, where, okay, what do we do with it now? We had this thing, we made it through, we're elated, we're a family, our kids have their dad back, but you could have stopped there and you didn't. And so we as a couple have created this amazing thing together. And I can't wait to hear all about your businesses, your books, and what you're doing to pay this forward. So let's talk about how you defeated your defeat and caused your failure to fail and what you do now.
So now we've created a program, and we've there's a one universal program, and then I've kind of broken off some of it for just for women, but we call it EPIC. And EPIC in the universal general one is ethos. I always forget ethos, philosophy, internalization, and carry on. And so we talk about those things. And then the one that I have kind of broken off, and I'm starting to develop a training for women, and I want to have some retreats and things. The EPIC means empower, perspective, intent, and community, because those are the things that helped me have what I needed to be able to get him out and to get through this, and to not only survive, but ultimately thrive because of it.
I love that so much. And I'm going to be so bold as to say we're going to collaborate, and I will come speak at one of your retreats, because that's it.
Yes.
I am all about it. And mine started from, the dogs, really the dogs. When I was at my worst, I looked at them, saw this unconditional love, realized I didn't have it for myself. And so my whole philosophy for women and everyone is learn to be your own best friend, the one that your dog already knows you are. And it's that whole, I love having the, the breakdowns of what are the steps that we need to take. And I just think it's so amazing. So now do you offer programs, or is it training? What is, if I say, hey, everybody, go to bellohutch.com or epichutch.com, what are they going to find there? Are there programs? Or
So we have a couple things going on. First of all, we've started the process with the American Council on Education to have college credits assigned, or our courses to be eligible for college credits for an accredited, regular, regionally accredited university or college to accept. So up to 12 college credits, and we're in that process. The process has not concluded. It's a several-year process of evaluation. But the courses, so we have the book, which is the EPIC book. That the first book is Ethos. What is it that you believe? Who are you? What guides you? What is your ethos? People get confused between ethos and ethics. Ethics is kind of the academic study of human behavior and human duty to one another. Ethos is something that's much more deep and personal. For example, we have in our book, in EPIC, we have 24 ethoses. I know that's kind of a weird way. The plural of ethos is ethoses, but we've asked some academians and academics, and they say that ethoses is the correct. So the first ethos is, when you're making a decision, it may not matter what decision you make, but it might. And because of the latter, do what is right. Mm-hmm. Ethos number one, it may not matter, but it might. Because of the latter, do what is right. That is a guiding ethos, and there's 24 of those. Then we couple that to the philosophy. And the philosophy is the understanding of how to deploy the ethos in a situation. Because life is very subjective. there are circumstances that change how you will behave or respond in given the circumstance. What the facts and circumstances are at point A may not be the same at point B, and you may respond differently. So the philosophy helps you calibrate your ethos to apply it appropriately in a given circumstance. And there's 124 of those. And that's kind of in homage to Seneca, the great Stoic philosopher, because he wrote 124 letters to his student. And so that's kind of the philosophy there. But here's where all this came from. During this period, we haven't shared this with you. During this period when Annette was fighting for me, and I mean, she was making progress. She was going to win. She was going to get me out cleanly. Somebody called the warden and said, put that guy in solitary confinement and lose his legal documents. Hide them, throw them away. We don't care what you do with them, just get rid of them, which they did. And they shackled me up in front of everybody in the prison yard. Have you ever been arrested in prison?
Oh my God. I didn't even know that was possible.
Yeah. So they called me to the captain's office. They shackled me up, recalled the yard, and made me do the perp walk down the middle of the corridor, down the prison compound, while everybody chanted my name as they walked me down the middle of the compound, shackled. So I've been arrested and imprisoned in prison. And they put me in Al Capone's cell. They said, this is Al Capone's old cell. This is where we put people like you. So they're doing this psychological warfare thing on me. And they put me in there, and they left me in there for 6 months. And meanwhile, Annette is fighting. Now, this is an episode 2. If you want to hear what Annette did to get me out of solitary confinement. So her first magnificent win was getting me out of solitary confinement. And that story will blow your mind.
We are doing an episode 2. We are so doing an episode 2. There's no doubt. Oh my gosh.
You do the warden at the compound later, after I was transferred away from Terminal Island, he told me, he said, look, I'll leave you alone if your wife leaves me alone. I don't want anything to do with your wife. She scares me. We have a deal. And it was like, I'll leave you alone. You leave me alone. If we have that agreement and you fulfill your bargain, my wife Annette will not come looking for you legally through the legal system. And so she's utterly a hero in the prison system. She's famous in the prison system. She's known by everybody in every federal prison. She's Joan of Arc.
I don't know if that's good or not.
But here's the thing. While I was in solitary confinement, I began to notice that I could change instantly how I viewed a situation. And I realized that I could sever the reality, step back and observe it as though I were somebody else. And then I could reframe that in a way where I was over it. I mean, where I ascend over it. And sometimes I hear people say, oh, I put that behind me. No. I don't put anything behind me because it can look at me. It can stare me in the back. I put it under my feet.
Nice.
I put it under I don't put something behind me. I put it under my feet. And during this period of time, Annette and I were writing, and a lot of the letters that we were writing to each other went missing. So we would get empty envelopes. So somebody who was screening them would take the letter out, wouldn't want me to see it, or they wouldn't want her to see it. But over this period of time, we wrote thousands of pages. And from those pages, Annette began to extract the salient, germane points, the most important points of these letters that we were writing back and forth to each other. And from that, she constructed a pattern of thinking, a pattern of behavior. And when she got it all organized and we looked at it, she said, this is an ethos and this is a philosophy. and the two go together, and therein lies Epic. Annette created Epic out of these writings from solitary confinement. And we have taught that to hundreds and hundreds of people, and they realize they don't have to be victimized by circumstances. They can literally sever that, step back, reframe it, put it under their feet, and then they can also voluntarily change their sympathetic nervous system reaction to a parasympathetic, to go from fight or flight to a rest and digest or a calm state. And this is what we're teaching people, is this is how it's done in the most intense crisis you can imagine. Being in Al Capone's solitary confinement prison cell, Annette and I are formulating this, and we formulated it, and it worked for us, and it has been working for others. And that's what the book is, and that's what Annette's retreats are.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I'm so in line with that. I'm so in line with that. I would call that, taking the emotion out of it. When we take the emotion out of how we feel about it, and we just stick with the facts. So as we know in psychology, you have a rational mind and emotional mind, and what you want to do is stay in the wise mind. And that's your method has perfected staying in that wise mind, where we're just going to look at the facts and we're going to stay positive in what action can we take. And I love that. And in my coaching, I call it recognition and integration. So we can't change anything until we recognize what we're doing, right? We can't until we recognize, how do I feel about something and what am I doing? I can't integrate new changes. And so I'm so in alignment with what you are doing. And what a beautiful, I hear a lot of Greek in there. So are one of you Greek?
No.
No, but we're Scottish, but I will tell you, we are students of ancient philosophy, and we have kind of selected all of the best parts of Aristotle and Plato and Socrates, and which I just have to interject this. One time I came home from Washington, D.C., and Annette was utterly frazzled. I'd been there all week, and she'd been taking care of the kids, and she was worn out and tired, and she wanted to go on a date. It's Friday night.
We went on a date every Friday night.
Yeah, for our whole marriage. That was one thing that we didn't compromise on. So she said, "How was your flight?" And I said, "It was great. I sat next to a professor from Princeton, and he's a philosophy professor, and we talked about Plato and Socrates." And she said, "I don't want to hear another thing about Play-Doh or soccer teams. I've had it with Play-Doh and soccer teams, and take me on a date." And so I told Annette, I said, when we finally had eaten and calmed down a little bit, I said, Plato and Socrates, not Play-Doh and soccer teams.
She didn't care. She just had one thing on her mind, and it was date night. And
that's right.
Hush about everything else, because I don't care. I just want to go out and have a nice dinner with my man.
That's right.
I just, all of that. I'm just so enamored by the way that we as humans have this ability, no matter what we go through. And I mean, I've talked to people with addictions, and I've, in fact, one of my recent episodes was someone who was in prison that is talking about the abuse, and she rallies for legislature to change the abuse in the prison system. So it's just amazing the things that we can overcome when we decide. And living my first half of my life thinking these are the cards I was dealt, and maybe next life I'll do something different, and then suddenly halfway through my life going, hey, wait a minute, no one decides how I live my life. No one creates my life except for me. But the hard part is, and especially with your story, is taking yourself away from the outside of what's going on, and to have that strength to be in that bubble and say, no matter what's going on around me, all that corruptness, and fighting, and the how unfair, and I think unfairness is underrated. That word, people say that's not unfair, it's how you view it, but there's so much unfairness. I really believe that is the encompassment of who we are as humans and the human spirit, that we can do that. We can be in that bubble, and Epic and Ethos is right on, spot on with that's the bubble of what we can do. We can choose how we think, we can choose how we feel in that circle of control. It's only our actions and our thoughts and our words that help us to live the life that we really, really want. So we are going to do an episode 2 because I've got to know how she got you out. And there's so much more to talk about. So, but what we will do is we'll let you guys tell everyone where to find you, and I'll have all of those websites and all the information in your show notes. But tell us about the book and the websites and what you've got going on right now.
So we have 2 websites, epichutch.com and ketohutch.com. Is that right? Is it Keto Hutch? I forgot. I keep changing it.
It's not on my list.
The reason, I'll tell you really quick why. Because when Matt got home, he had 4 autoimmune diseases from malnutrition, sleeping in terrible environment. And we found a drink called, and they're exogenous ketones. And so that is part of our system, because that takes you from the fight or flight to the rest or digest. And he literally, since drinking those, his blood work has come back as a 25-year-old.
It changed everything.
It changed everything. So that's why I keep forgetting which website I have. But we'll just say, go to epichutch.com and it'll have everything you need.
Oh, good. Everything.
And so
okay.
Somebody can buy the book there. There's 5 books. There's kind of our story plus the epic. So the first book is our story, which we shared with you, and then ethos, philosophy, internalization, carry on. That's the 5-book series. So they can buy the pre-order. We're in the pre-orders state of the book right now. Our publisher has finished editing it, and they're going through the process of preparing it for publication. Then we have our courses completed, and we have our course sites and the ability to enroll all ready to go. And of course, Annette's getting ready for her big women conference, retreat, workshop. All the information will be there. So we're doing ongoing education. We're doing the books. We're doing her retreats. And of course, we'd be happy to do a one-on-one with somebody if they wanted to talk to us. We obviously don't have unlimited amount of time, but if somebody really felt like it would matter to them to speak with us because they have a situation that they need help with, we'd be willing to take a little bit of time. But
also speaking
public speaking, which we have both done a significant amount of. The main thing is that in the books we explain the baby steps that somebody would need to take a defeat scenario and defeat it. That's what's in the books.
Helps when I unmute myself. I love that. Babies, I coughed and I muted and didn't unmute. Baby steps, as I always say, as long as you're moving and you're not standing still. And so baby steps are really what we need. It just makes it easier to embrace change. So thank you so much. I love you guys.
Thank you.
What I do, since our topics are so heavy, is I usually end this on a really I try to do a little lighter note. And so I have a new series that I'm doing, or a new segment that I'm doing that I started in January here. And it's called What'd You Get? And I want to know, what is a gift that you've either given or received that's sort of strange, but like something you'll never forget? And it can be silly. It can be, and I'll tell you mine so I can like help you guys think, because I always spring this on people and they're like, oh, Maureen, you're making us think right now. I got an LED toilet light this year. And I'm not kidding you. I freaking love it. Now I'm very OCD. I don't like germs. So it's not like I put it in the toilet, and I think there's ones you can put in the toilet, but mine's just on top so that, when you get up in the middle of the night, it's motion activated. And I have this really pretty, like rainbow different color lighting while I'm doing my middle of the night thing. So what did you get that was kind of memorable, unique, fun?
Well, Annette got me a microphone for speaking to people,
Yes.
which I absolutely loved. I got a nice unique little pen that a fellow made for me from a block of wood. He actually took a block of wood and spun it on his lathe and made a pen.
That's fun.
I thought that was kind of neat.
So is this something like for Christmas that you're talking about, or just ever?
It could be ever. Like you could remember when you're 5 years old receiving it, or someone gave you a just because, but just anything, a gift or something.
So for my birthday, for 4 years in a row, when we had toddlers that were still crawling around, babies that were still crawling around, Matt and the 2 older kids would bring me a kitten for my birthday. And every year for 2 years, I'm like, it is not time for a kitten. We didn't have anywhere to put it. We didn't have anywhere for its food that the babies couldn't get into. So that was, that's the funny one. But then we ended up getting a cat that we loved and adored.
I had to go back to the pet store all forlorn and contrite. Here's your cat back. I'm sorry, but my wife didn't want the cat.
For 4 years, it was pretty funny.
Yes. It's a commitment. It's not a spontaneous impulse buy. I'm just going to say that someone who is all about the dogs and the kitties. I have a kitty that I love too. We have to think a little bit further when we're going to give a pet. That's a lifetime commitment, mister.
There is one thing that I want to show you. Hold on just a minute.
Oh, sure. All right. I have to laugh though, Annette, as a Army wife, back in the 90s, my husband at the time was getting duty. So everybody has to get duty and they have to pull some kind of an extra duty. And I remember I worked at the NCO club, and my boss at the NCO club was a retired master sergeant. And he said, well, did they go through the entire roster before he had to do duty again? Because I was really frustrated. I was like, oh, he's going to be gone again this weekend. And I said, I don't know, but I'm going to find out. And I went to his first sergeant and his CO, and I sat down with them and I said, you show me where you went through the entire roster, because this is the morale of your soldiers. And if they can't spend time with their families, then you're not going to have a good soldier and they're not going to give their best. And you can see where this went. I was rambling and rambling. And they said, okay, he doesn't have duty. And they said the same thing. They said, Nelson, which is my ex's or my married name, he said, you're not going to have duty anymore. Just do not let your wife come in here again. So
I love that.
I see you and I get it, because, and I was 19 at the time, had no clue how the military worked.
Wow.
All I know was I was a civilian and I could say what I wanted. You don't own me. So that was
that for you.
I love powerful women who rough up the powers that be. It's a beautiful thing. So see this right here. One of my coworkers made this. It's a cotton little bowl. And what you do is you put your bowl inside here and you put your soup in there and you microwave it. And so when it's, your bowl's hot, you just pick this up and you eat your bowl with the little cup.
So
and
so guys, if you're not watching on YouTube, what it is it almost looks like a hot pad bowl, and then you put your bowl inside the hot pad so you can actually eat it while it's hot, and it holds it and keeps you from burning your hand. I love creativity. That is super creative. Thanks for sharing that. That is amazing. All right, until part 2, episode 2, or the next episode where we're gonna catch up in a month or so. That's all for today, my listeners. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did, because I am just so full. This made my day, and I'm inspired and aspired to get your book, because I know as an author, fellow author, guys, go get that book, and please leave those reviews, because as authors, it's really what gets our books out there and noticed, and maybe a little royalty. So thank you for that, everyone. My books, speaking of, are My Dog is More Enlightened Than I Am. I'm trying to pull them out here. My Dog is More Enlightened Than I Am. And My Dog is My Relationship Coach. This year we did a children's book. My Dog Bex, he is just like me, and it teaches mindfulness to our little guys, our early readers, so 6 and under. Through repetition, you can substitute your dog's name, and it teaches that emotions are good, self-care is good, and everything related to the puppies. And if anyone is looking for confidence coaching, relationship coaching, dating coaching, and just life coaching in general to make some changes in this new year, I'm at lifecoachmaureen.com. All of my stuff is also in one place. I love it when people combine everything in one place, because one-stop shop is so much easier for us in this technology world. And last but not least, my boutique, mydogiseverything.net. We have healthy treats made by me personally in my kitchen, and kitty treats, as well as homemade stuff like the soup pot holder. I love that. We make scrunchies for your dog collars, and we also have lots of apparel and safety products, safety belts for the car, and paw washers, all kinds of fun things. So mydogiseverything.net. I love you all for being here. Please go leave those 5-star reviews. We're still 5 stars on Apple. We have over 20,000 listeners at this point, so I'm proud of that. And just anything you want to say, you want to communicate with both Annette and Matthew, you can do that through me, through them. We love positive feedback, and we just love you all for building this community. Share this with your friends and family. And the whole point in life is to be there for each other, to lift each other, and to support each other. And that's why I started the podcast. So love you all. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. Most of all, take care of those furry babies. And this one's for you, Matthew. Please adopt and don't shop, so you don't have to take that to the pet store.
We did adopt.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yay. All right. Love you all. Until next week. Mwah.